again for joining us for tonight's virtual class, The Introduction to Boating. I'm Chris Hearn. I'm the West Tennessee Field Rep for the Tennessee Wildlife Federation, and I work primarily with the Hunting and Fishing Academy. I've really enjoyed sharing what I know about the outdoors through these virtual classes, and hopefully you guys will gain some knowledge about boating here tonight. Also joining me tonight is Hardin County Boating Officer Seth Snow. Seth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. What's going on, guys? My name is Officer Seth Snow. I've been with Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency for about 8 years now. I live in Hardin County. I work boating, hunting, fishing down here this way. I primarily do mostly boating on Pickwick Lake and Kentucky Lake, Tennessee River, up around to I-40. So I've got about, I don't know, 75, 100 miles worth of river that I cover throughout the year. So it's good to be here. I appreciate you letting me join in, Chris.
All right, man, I'm glad to have you. Also helping us tonight is Jeb Beasley. He's the East Tennessee field rep with Federation. Jeb, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Zoom functions and the layout for tonight's class?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So if this is your first time joining us for one of these virtual classes, the way that this is going to work is that if you have questions throughout the class tonight, the way that you're going to be able to answer those is at the bottom of your screen. You're going to see a little function, a little button that says Q&A. So we cannot see you guys. We can't hear y'all. But if you have questions at any point throughout the class, go ahead and throw those in the Q&A function. And we're going to be sure to address those. I know Chris and Seth have got some designated times where we're going to stop and take some questions, and then we're also going to have some time at the end to answer questions. But any point throughout the class that you have something come up, go ahead and throw it in there, and we will address it at some point. So that's kind of how it'll work, and then I'll turn it back over to you, Chris.
All right, thanks, Jeb. I want to just kind of go over what we're going to cover tonight. We are going to cover the basics that will get you started safely and confidently operating your boat. But this is not the Tennessee Boater Education course that's required to people that was born after January 1st of 1989. Hopefully you will. It kind of does go hand in hand and cover some of the same things, but this is just meant to be more of a basic thing to get you started, but it's not meant to get you certified like that course will. But we're going to cover the safety equipment and the other gear that you're going to need to gather before your outing. And we're also going to cover what to do when you're launching and loading your boat. And then we're going to cover some of the basics to actually operating your vessel once you're out on the water. So now I'm going to turn it over to Seth, and he's going to cover some of the equipment that you're going to need in your boat.
All right, guys. So some of you may be very familiar with boating. Some of you may just be getting started. So we'll try to just go with the basics. And we're going to start off here with the most important safety item on the list. It's a personal flotation device, a PFD. There's several different types of PFDs, but you have to have one of these for each person on your vessel. Of course, we recommend that you wear one. It's kind of like your seatbelt when you hop in a vehicle. A lot of people, they want to put that on and it protects them. And it's the same with a life jacket. Wearing a life jacket keeps you safe. If you're ever thrown out of the boat into the water, it will float you and keep you safe. So we'll talk about some different types here. There's what's called a type 1 life jacket. That's more of an offshore vest. If you've ever been on a cruise or something like that. I know when I went on a cruise, they wanted us to put these on and explain to us how to put them on properly. I don't see a lot of these. They have a lot of flotation in them. They'll turn an unconscious person face up. They're probably not the most comfortable life jacket out there. So what I do see a lot of are type 2 life jackets. A lot of people call them an orange horse collar. If you have, say, 6 people in your boat, you'll want to have 6 of these on board. That way you'll be legal. They will float you. They'll keep you safe. They'll keep you from drowning. They're a little bit smaller than a type 1. Not the most comfortable thing to wear. As far as a type 3, a lot more comfortable to wear. I call these a ski vest. They're good for tubing, riding on your jet ski, towing somebody, skiing, wakeboarding, wake surfing. And they're also good for fishing. They're not very restrictive, don't get in your way very much. So you may be sitting there thinking, well, what type do I need on my boat and how many do I need? And like I said, of course, we recommend that you wear them. But if you're not going to wear them, then you have to have one for each person of any of these types. So if you have 4 people on your boat, you can have 4 type 1s, 4 type 2s, or 4 type 3s, or a combination of any of them. So that's kind of a quick rundown of those 3. If you look over to the right, there's a type 4. This is called a throwable device. If you have a boat that is greater than 16 foot in length, you're going to want to have one of these on board, either a square throw cushion or a ring buoy. This is for rendering aid. If somebody, God forbid, ever happened to get thrown in the water, or you pass somebody who's needing help, I like to refer to it as you can sling it like a frisbee, and you can throw it to them and they can grab onto those handles and float there until you can get there to help them. So greater than 16 foot in length, you want to have one of those on board. And then there's what's called a type 5 life jacket. That's an inflatable life jacket. These must be worn in order for them to count. So if you have 4 of these in your boat, you have 4 people, you're going to want to have these on. The newer ones now, they have a small pill in them that if they get wet, they'll actually go off. So they have a CO2 cartridge in them and they'll expand and float you. So like I said, a type 5 has to be worn in order for those to count. I want to cover real quickly about life jacket wear below dams. I'm down here at Pickwick Dam, so I see a lot of people going up there fishing, catching catfish, stripers, bass, that sort of thing. Down here, it's 1,000 foot below the dam. You have to be wearing a life jacket. So I just want to make that aware. If you ever come down here, ever get around any dams in your area. Want to talk about wearing a personal flotation device on a PWC as well as towing. I covered it just a little bit, but if you're on a jet ski, a personal watercraft, you're going to want to have on either a type 1, a type 2, or a type 3. And like I said, a type 3 is definitely the most comfortable to wear on your jet ski. And you're also going to want to have one on while you're being towed. So skiing, tubing, that sort of thing. And if you have any children 12 and under the age of 13, they have to have a life jacket on that fits them comfortably at all times, unless that boat is anchored or ran up on the ground. Be sure your life jackets are Coast Guard approved. There'll be a number listed on those. I know that was a lot to cover in a short amount of time, but the main thing to get out of that is just make sure that you have a life jacket for each person on board, if not wearing them. So another piece of safety equipment, as you can see here, this gentleman had a bad day, is a fire extinguisher. You must have at least one fire extinguisher on board in case something happens, electrical fire or a combustible fire with fuel or gasoline, and it must be a type B. So if you go to Walmart and look in the fire extinguisher section, you'll see that it's a type B that you want to get. That's for combustible liquids. And a lot of people think, well, I don't really need a fire extinguisher, but they're very important. And a lot of boats have built-in fire extinguishers, but those actually don't count because electrical fires can start underneath the consoles. A lot of people don't think about that, but just be sure you have all these things readily accessible and you can get to them. And if you're ever approached by an officer, we're all real friendly. Just say, hey, yeah, right here's my fire extinguisher, and just be sure you can get to it pretty quick. One more piece of safety equipment we'll discuss here is what's called a safety lanyard, or more commonly known as a kill switch. It's not actually a Tennessee law that you have to wear a kill switch if you're in a ski boat or a bass boat, but it's a great idea. If you ever hit a big wave or you're ever ejected from your seat or from your boat, this actually cuts the engine off. If you're on a personal watercraft or a jet ski, this is a must. You have to have that on. Of course, we all know that jet skis are made to have fun and spray and get slung around, and they're a lot easier to get thrown off of. So you have to have a kill switch attached to your person or around your wrist. That way, if you are slung off, if and when you are slung off of your jet ski, that it'll kill that motor and keep it from going and potentially hitting somebody or hitting yourself and getting you seriously injured. This isn't necessarily a slide on safety equipment. This is just some additional equipment that's good for you to carry on your boat with you. The very first thing there in the top left corner are just what's called dock bumpers. They're good to carry on for when you pull up docks, maybe to eat. It'll protect your boat if you're out there with your family and friends and you want to tie up with them. It'll keep your boats from getting beat up and dented and dinged up. Jumper cables are always a great thing to have. It never fails. I'm out patrolling and somebody's ran their radio just a little too long and need a set of jumper cables. So I always carry a set on my boat, and it's a good thing to have on yours too, because sometimes I might have to use them on my truck and I forgot them. Some rope, always good to have rope for towing or for tying off. If you ever have to be towed in, just carry some extra rope with you. I like to carry about 100 foot with me. Anchor, if you're going to go out, hanging out with your friends. A mushroom anchor there, that's good for small boats, kayaks, canoes, small john boats. They don't really dig into the substrate like a river anchor or a grapnel anchor will. You can see they've got those hooks on them that's really good for digging into the substrate. It'll hold you there really well. I like to try not to drop my anchor straight down. I like to have, if I'm in say 10 foot of water, I like to have about 20 or 25 foot of rope out. That way it puts that anchor at an angle and digs it into the substrate really good and holds you there. Drain plugs, always a good thing to remember. I think Chris is going to talk about loading and unloading your boat at the ramp, and I'm sure he'll remind you guys again to always put your drain plug in. Had a gentleman over the holiday weekend on Pickwick forgot to put his in. He said it's about once every 25 years he forgets to put one in, and he did that day. And luckily he was able to get it back on the trailer before it sunk. So always good to have your drain plug in, and carry an extra one. You never know, you may lose it, may not make a good seal. Just carry an extra one. Safe tools, wrenches, pliers, hammers. And you just never know. Always good to have spare parts, spare tools. You may not know how to work on them, but somebody around you may can fix it. And I like to carry around a first aid kit on my personal boat and my work boat. I always have one on my work boat. But first aid kit for minor stuff, cuts, bug spray, Band-Aids, that sort of thing. Just always a good thing to have. You can never have too much stuff out there on the water.
Good deal. I want to cover a little bit about how you can find the boat launches in Tennessee. And this is a screenshot of TWRA's interactive boating and fishing access map. And we're going to be sending up a follow-up email to this class tomorrow. And I've included the link on this interactive map, but you can see the icons. We're kind of zoomed in to West Tennessee around the Kentucky Lake area here. And all of the ramps are in blue, and there's different marinas and things represented by the anchors. And then there's also details about fishing stuff there as well. But you can click those icons like the one I've done here for Brody's Landing, and it's going to give you the location. It'll actually give you the Google directions, a link to go get the Google direction to that ramp. Some of the general regulations regarding fishing and boating in Tennessee. And also it's going to tell you when that ramp is open, the areas of access, and a little bit about the size of the ramp. So it goes into a lot of detail right here, and it's really a wealth of information. So the next thing I want to talk about is ramp etiquette. If you think about last weekend, Memorial Day weekend on Kentucky Lake, Tennessee River System, and probably every lake and river in the state was just jam-packed with people. And, you know, you're trying to get a couple hundred boats out of some of these ramps, and that's when ramp etiquette really pays. And some of the things I want to cover is just like have your boat ready before you get anywhere near the launching area. And that's going to include undoing all your straps, inserting your plug like Seth was talking about. I also like to pump the primer bulb for my motor, the bulb that carries the fuel from the tank up to the motor. If your motor has that, go ahead and do that while you're up there. get your life jackets laid out, get them ready to be put on. Most motors are cooled by water, so I don't like to crank my motor outside of the water, but you can definitely check the status of your battery. Like for instance, my boat, when I turn that key over, I've got a loud beeping noise that kind of says, hey, you know, the battery's hot, and it would crank if I turned it on over. For some outboards, you can kind of just turn it over, make sure it's going to turn over. To avoid a situation where you put your boat in the water and now your battery's dead and you're just kind of dead there and in everybody's way. And then also, if you're launching your boat with a partner, this is a time before you start backing down the ramp that you can they can actually go on and jump in that boat. As for unhooking the front of the boat, it kind of depends on the trailer and it depends on the ramp. My boats, they stay on the trailer pretty well, and I generally unhook them before I start backing, just to save that little bit of time of having to get out once I get to the water. But if you've got a trailer that's got rollers on it, or it's a pretty lightweight boat or a steep ramp, you might wait till you get that boat all the way in the water, jump out, unhook it, your buddy pulls off, and then you get in the truck and go park as quick as you can. And then I just can't emphasize enough, practice backing in advance. And, you know, you can do this in a vacant parking lot with some cones, or just kind of get used to backing around the house or around the yard. And then outside of just general backing your boat, it's best to start the whole boating process on ramps that's maybe less popular, or during a weekday where they're not as jam-packed. And that way you can get all the kinks worked out and kind of get a system for putting your boat in. Each boat is kind of different as far as the way that it wants to be launched or loaded. So just practice with that and try to do it on areas that's not quite as congested. And then also, if the ramp has multiple lanes, be sure to stay in your lane. You don't want to hinder the flow of traffic. And you know, I've seen people on a three lane ramp and they take up all 3 lanes to kind of jackknife across there, putting their boat in there. So let's just try to stay in your lane if you can. And there's a ton of blooper videos out there, and I wanted to play this little video for you guys just to show you what not to do. So these guys probably have not practiced backing their trailer. So he got his buddy to pick up the trailer and help him down towards the water. So you don't want to be that guy. But I do want to show you another video here of actually a little bit about launching and loading your boat. So this is about a 2-minute video. I'll play you guys this and then we'll take some questions.
Turn the battery on and put the plug in. It's a common courtesy to be prepared when you get to the boat ramp so you don't hold other people up. Also, if there are multiple lanes, be careful to stay in your lane so you don't hog up the entire ramp. When you're ready to drop your boat, leave the bow hook connected until the boat is fully in the water, or else you risk the boat sliding off the trailer. As you guide your trailer into the water, make sure you stop at the right depth. Because every ramp and trailer are a little different, the easy rule of thumb is to back your trailer in the water until you see the boat just to start to float off. Disconnect the bow hook before pulling away. You should never have to forcefully power the boat on or off the trailer. When you're ready to put your boat back on the trailer, approach slowly, taking the boat in and out of gear so you can line up correctly. It helps to aim the nose of the boat towards the strap for the bow hook. However, if there are wind and/or current factors, note that the angle of which you approach the trailer will be different. If you end up crooked, turn around and try again. It's better to take a little extra time than trying to self-correct by powering the boat on the trailer and risking damage. If you find your trailer is not far enough in the water, do not force the boat on. Connect your bow hook and hand crank the boat into place. Now that you have the boat on the trailer and the bow hook is connected, pull the boat out of the water, replace the transom straps, take out the plug, put the cover on, and do anything else you need to get road ready.
That's a pretty good little video, a 2-minute video of loading and launching your boat. There's a bunch of videos out there and you can find them on YouTube. I'm going to include that video on that email that'll be going out tomorrow in case you want to refer back to it. But has anybody got any questions about what to do before launching your boat and then the process of launching your boat.
Chris, we do have one question. It's not specifically about loading or unloading your boat, but it's about registration. And I think you guys are getting ready to cover that here in just a second. I'll go ahead and read it. And if you want to answer it now or wait to answer it, you can. But it's from Timothy and it says, do you have to register a boat with only a trolling motor attached?
Yep, we're fixing to jump onto that slide, and I'll talk about that right here in just a second.
Yeah, it's the very next slide. So we'll just push it back one slide. Let's knock out what we've got as far as what we've covered so far, if there's any more questions.
Gotcha. Yeah, we have one more question from Wes talking about, I'm assuming the process of loading and unloading your boat and things like that. He asked, is this process about the same for large boats and yachts?
Yeah, I've never personally launched a yacht, but that same process, a two-man team of backing and using the motor to get on and off the trailer is even more important the bigger the boat. And so to answer his question, yes, I think that's probably going to be about the best process when it comes to big boats. I will take the time, since he did ask a question about big boats. Another method for if you're solo or even with a partner on smaller boats, especially, on my flat bottom aluminum boat, I keep about a 20-foot rope attached to that front, and I can take a person and put them down beside the ramp holding the end of that rope. I'll back down into the water. They might give it just a little bit of a push off the trailer and then use that rope to pull the boat back to us. And then also, even if you're by yourself, sometimes, of course, I've done this a whole bunch of times, but you can also tie that rope to the trailer, back in, pull your boat up just a little bit to where you can grab that rope, pull the boat up, tie it off, go park your truck. But really, that method is, to me, kind of used in areas that's less congested. If you're in a congested area, it's really always better to have somebody to help you, but sometimes you don't. You just have to do what you can. You got anything to add to that, Seth? You probably.
No, I'm good. Make sure your truck's big enough to handle your boat. I've seen some Toyota Tacomas putting in some, big boats, and they'll slide all the way down the boat ramp till they hit the water. So
yeah, there was a video out there. It was in my top 5 to add in here for the funny blooper one. There was a guy with a front wheel drive little Honda Accord putting a big boat in, and he put it in. He couldn't get back up the ramp. They had to push him. But
yeah.
All right. Is that all the questions, Jeb?
There is one more. It's from Elijah. He asks, if you can't back a boat in until it starts to float off, how else could you get it off the trailer?
Well, I think I'm going to answer this properly, but that kind of goes back to, the type of boat and trailer you got and the steepness of the ramp. You could go ahead and unhook that beforehand, and then most of the time, if I've got a buddy in the boat, I've unhooked beforehand. I get it down to the water's edge, make sure the boat's in the water. That's kind of the point of the boat, and then I'll hit the brakes pretty hard, and it'll the momentum will take that boat on off of the trailer, so it don't really have to be motored like in the video. And I know that might even pertain to the guy that's just got the trolling motor on a boat. You want to use the force and making it as easy on you as possible.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But we're gonna, if that's everything on the launching and loading, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Seth, and
Okay.
Where the next slide is going to answer this gentleman's question, I believe.
All right. Yeah, so we'll talk about some boat registration real quick, how to display these. So if you already own a boat and you already have it registered in your name, you just want to be sure to look at your registration sticker. You see right here, this boat has a 21 sticker. Now be sure to look at it and look at the month and day that it goes out. That doesn't mean that it's good all the way through 2021. There's a month and a date, just like on your vehicle tag. There's a month that it runs out and you want to be able to renew that. So if you already have your boat registered in your name, the easiest way to renew your registration is just go to the TWRA On The Go app. You can download it on your iPhone or Android, and you can purchase renewed registration for 1, 2, or 3 years. It's not very expensive, but that's the simplest way. So I want to talk about if you've just bought a boat, maybe from a friend, a relative, or just somebody off maybe Facebook Marketplace or something like that, how you go about registering that boat really quickly. So say you've just bought a boat from a gentleman and his registration doesn't run out until 2023. Unfortunately, it's just like a vehicle. You can't run on that individual's registration. So it's no longer valid once you sign the paperwork and sign the bill of sale and get it in your possession. So what you want to do is you want to take that bill of sale to the county clerk's office, and you have to pay the taxes on it. And then you'll mail the form to TWRA to receive the registration numbers. And once you receive those registration numbers, it'll have a very detailed way to put those on there. Those numbers need to be on the bow, on the front portion of the boat, on both sides where they can be visible. 3-inch high block letters and contrasting colors. So of course, if you have a black boat, you want to stick white letters on there where I can see them from a distance. And if everything looks good, you probably won't get stopped and you can carry on throughout your day. And we'll send you a registration card once again, just like on your vehicle, and just carry that card with you to show that you've got it registered and it's in your name. So to talk about the kayak, so anything that is not propelled by yourself. So if you're paddling a kayak or you're pedaling it, it does not have to be registered. But as soon as you put a trolling motor on it, a canoe or a kayak, with even just a trolling motor, you have to register that guy in your name and put numbers on the side of it. So I hope that answers your question. If you have any more, just type them in down there and we'll get to them.
We do have one question about registration, and the question says, what about transferring registration from another state? How long until it needs to be done once I'm in Tennessee?
Okay, yeah, so I see that a lot down here where I'm at, where I live on the Alabama-Mississippi line, my county is, and I see a lot of boats coming from Alabama, Mississippi. So say if you buy the boat on a Friday and you can't get to the county clerk's office to pay the taxes, well, you're good throughout the weekend with your bill of sale, but by law, it needs to be registered in your name before you can take it out. So they'll give you at the county clerk's office, they'll give you what's got a temporary copy. It'll be a carbon copy. It'll be yellow, and you'll carry that with you, and that'll be your temporary registration card. And until you get the hard card in the mail from TWRA. All right, we'll talk about capacity plates here. A lot of boats have these on them. It's just a recommendation. It's put out by the U.S. Coast Guard on these boats. We'll just talk about it really quickly. So on this boat, if you look at it, it says 7 persons or 1,050 pounds. If you have 8 people on this boat, you're not going to get wrote a ticket or anything. But it's just a recommendation, and it can make it very difficult to maneuver, or it could possibly cause it to capsize or swamp. So if you put, say, 10 or 12 people on this boat, and there's only 1 or 2 inches of the boat showing, then we're going to have an issue. So I see a lot of that on pontoon boats, especially on Pickwick and Party Cove. People think they can fit as many people on there as there are seats, and half the motor will be underwater. So just be aware of that. Look at your boat if you have one, and it should be right around the helm. It also gives you a recommendation of your person's motor and gear, 1,400 pounds on this boat. So you have to take into consideration your fishing tackle, your coolers, what you're carrying on with you that day, and then a recommendation of your motor horsepower. So you wouldn't want to stick a 225 horsepower motor on this boat. You want to keep it around 130 horsepower or below. All right, just some terminology really quick. If you hear it out on the water, if you look on the left side of the boat is called the port side, P-O-R-T, L-E-F-T. That's the best way I remember it, just 4 letters. Port is the left. The starboard side is the right side. The bow is the front of the boat. So I always remember you bow to the crowd, you bow forward. So the bow is the front, and the stern is the back side of the boat. You look right there on the left side, there's a cleat. That's just for tying your boat off to the dock or with some friends. And we'll talk about lights here on the next slide. So if you look right here, your all around white light and your red and green side lights. So when do these need to be turned on? By law, your lights have to be turned on at sunset, and you can turn them off at sunrise. So sunset changes every day. Is it always completely dark at sunset? If it's a bright, sunny summer day, yeah, it's not going to be completely dark right at sunset. You're going to have a few minutes after that. So just be aware of that to turn those on at sunset. And both of those have to be on if your vessel is underway. So that means if you're not anchored out there or up on ground, both your red and green side lights and your all around white light have to be on. And all around white light must be visible from 360 degrees, should be the highest point of your boat. And just going to want to have those on. Red is on the left side of your boat, green is on the right side of your boat. This is just to show if you're navigating out in the waters after dark, say on a fireworks show or something, it just shows what side of the boat you're coming up on. Now, if you're just anchored out there, say you're out anchored and you're catfishing after dark or something like that, all you have to have on is your all around white light. You're going to want to turn those red and green side lights off, and that signifies that you are no longer underway. You're just sitting there hanging out, so you can see that white light, and that gives everybody the opportunity to get well out of the way of you. I do want to talk about docking lights really quickly. A lot of these newer boats have what are called docking lights on them. They look like two headlights on the front. These should only be displayed when you're docking. What they do is they wash out the red and green side lights so people can't see what side of the boat or what position they're approaching you on. And it can be blinding to the other operators. So just be sure when you're out after dark to slow down, take your time, and just be sure to just run your red and greens and your white lights only.
Great. Yeah. And one more thing I might add is, we talked about the app as a resource to be able to renew your registrations, and it also has your sunrise and sunset times on that as well. So, that Go Outdoors Tennessee app is just a good resource to have on your phone if you're going to be out on the water.
All right. Just a couple other quick things you might see out there while on your boat. This is what's called a channel marker buoy. I have lots of those on the Tennessee River and Pickwick Lake. What these are, they're signifying the original channel that is below all that water before the dams were built. So that's the deepest point of the lake or the river system. And it's mark the edges of the safe water. So when you see commercial traffic, say barges coming down, they're always inside these channel marker buoys. So you want to try to stay in these. I know down where I'm at in South Tennessee, Southwest Tennessee on Pickwick, it's not as big of a deal to get outside of these channel marker buoys. But say you get up around maybe where Chris is at around New Johnsonville, it can go from 40 foot to 3 foot just on the other side of them. So just be aware of that. There's a navigational chart that you can look at. There's a couple of cool apps on your phone. CMAP is one that I've got downloaded that shows you where these are supposed to be, and it'll pinpoint you right on your phone, and you can stay inside the channel. There's one little quick phrase that I like to talk about. It's called red right returning. So if you're traveling upstream, you want to keep the red buoy on your right. And there's a green buoy called a can buoy. And it'll be on the left side of you if you're traveling upstream. So remember, red right returning, you're returning upstream. You want to always keep those red buoys on your right and the green buoys on the left. And of course, vice versa. If you're going downstream, you keep the green buoys on your right and the red buoys on your left. So I know that's kind of confusing to some, but just remember red right returning, RRR, keep your red buoys on your right when you're going upstream. And just some non-navigational buoys that you may see out here. They're going to be white with orange lettering. and orange symbols on them. Squares indicate they're an informational buoy. They indicate direction or fuel or food, supplies, repairs, that sort of thing. A white buoy with an orange diamond, it just signifies danger. There may be a rock, it's a construction area, could be a shoal or some stumps in the area. Now that doesn't mean you can't take your boat in there. You can still run your boat in there. You can still fish, hang out behind these buoys. It's just giving you a heads up saying, hey, you may hit something right here. I'm going to skip no wake really quickly. I'm going to go to the diamond with a cross in it. This is off limits to all boats. So this is places like swimming areas or top portions of dams and spillways where they don't want you going with your boat, dangerous areas, that sort of thing. So you want to keep out from behind these buoys. And then no wake buoys is going to be a circle. So no wake means idle speed. So wake is the waves created, by your boat. So once you get to these buoys, you're going to want to be at a no wake. I see it all the time, especially down here where I'm at on Pickwick, where they'll run all the way to the buoy and then back it down once they get to the no wake buoy, and they plow a lot of water. And just remember, you're responsible for your wake, so you don't want to damage anybody's boat or hurt somebody unloading or loading their boat. So just remember, no wake once you get to that buoy.
Guys, that brings us to the end of tonight's class, and we're going to be here for a few more minutes to take any questions that you guys might have for myself or Seth.
While we're waiting on anybody else to send in some questions, Seth, I had a question that me and Chris were talking about
Go ahead.
earlier this week. Was you were talking about the docking lights earlier. I know, especially in the hunting world and even some bow fishing and things like that, where people have the big light bars on the front of their boat. Is there any legal thing that people should be aware of concerning those really bright light bars on their boats?
So those light bars in bow fishing, when you're actively fishing, you still have to have your red and green and your white lights on, even though you're projecting those bow fishing lights. But as long as you're actively fishing, you're good to go. But as soon as you set your boat down and get everybody sitting down in the water or sitting down in the boat, you got to turn those lights off and just have your red and green and your white lights on. And then once you get back to your next spot, you want to turn them on. I've ran up on those guys before in Decatur County up in Beach River. And man, they are so bright. You just got to pull over to the side and let them go on until they get past you, because it is so blinding. So just be sure to turn those off if you're traveling up or down the river.
Awesome. Thanks. We've got a couple other questions coming in here. Two of them about getting your boater's license. So I know we've kind of touched on it, but one of the questions reads just simply, how do I get my boating license? And then the other says, is there anything else that you didn't cover on the boating license that we need to be aware of? So maybe just walk us through kind of what that process looks like, what people need in order to get the license, and then maybe touch on again who needs to have a license.
Yeah. So individuals that have to have a boating license are those that are born after January 1st, 1989. So I'm 31 years old and I've got to have it. So January 1st, 1989 is the cutoff date. It's a good thing to have for anybody. If you're born before that date and you have insurance on your boat, I've seen a lot of insurance companies will actually cut you a little bit lower rates if you show proof that you've had it. So how do you go about getting it? If you'll just get on our website and look, you can lots of times find a class. I always recommend going to a class. My class takes about 3 or 4 hours, and you test and you're done with it, and that's all you got to do, and you have it forever. Say you don't have time to test our exam, it has to be a proctored exam. So a lot of libraries offer it. So what you want to do is you want to buy what's called a Type 600 permit. It's $10. You can run to your local fishing store, somewhere that sells our hunting and fishing licenses, and just tell them you need your boater safety permit. It's $10 and you can run to your local library and take the test. I suggest that you study the material, get you a book. Most of the libraries will have them. Get you a book and you can study it. And once you pass it, you've got it forever. But like I said, I recommend definitely taking the class. We cover all this and a lot more. There's a lot of navigational, the ways you travel, meeting boats, crossing situations, meeting head on, coming up on behind boats, that sort of thing that we'll cover in there. Just a little more in depth. So this is a good start, but I definitely recommend you getting on our website and going to the voting section and finding an available class if you can.
Awesome. And while we're on the subject, we had another question talking about getting your license. The question reads, how long does the license take? And I'm assuming they mean, how long would one person expect to take? Like, how long does the class, to the boater education class, how much time would somebody need to dedicate to do that? And then I'm assuming that's what they're asking in that question.
Yeah. So I do mine. I try to have 2 or 3 a year here in Hardin County. I do them on a Saturday morning. They usually take 4. I delegate 4 hours, but that's usually the max. About 3.5 hours I can be through the material. Now, it's a lot of material, but we cover it pretty in depth. And once you take the test, you can be out of there. If you, like I said, if you don't have time, you're looking at about maybe 45 minutes at your local library, or maybe like Bartlett Shooting Range in Memphis to take the test. But how much you study the material, that's kind of on you, how much you want to dedicate to it. But it's not an easy test, so be sure you do study it if you don't come to a class.
Awesome. We've got a couple more here. The first one reads, does the On the Go app show the regulations and rules for what fish you can keep? So not necessarily a boating specific question, but something geared more towards fishing.
Yeah, I believe it does, doesn't it, Chris? It has, does it have pictures and that sort of thing, and shows you the length limit? And I think you can actually pull up a PFD file of our actual hunting and fishing regulations. It's the entire book on the app, right?
You can on that app. I believe it's got a fish identification tab, and then it's also got regulations. And then I'm going to include a link to the Tennessee fishing regulation book, the guidebook, and it breaks down each waterway kind of individually. But yeah, that's something that on your phone you can pull up about any waters in Tennessee and be able to see what specific regulations they have on their fisheries on that app.
Great. We've got a couple more here. Matthew asked, is there a separate registration required for the boat trailer? I know that's something we've seen in other states, but we'll let you guys cover that.
So in Tennessee, the only thing you have to register is your boat. Other states, you have to register your outboard motor and your trailer and put an actual tag on your trailer. But in Tennessee, we're not what's called a title state. You don't have to have a title for your boat in order to buy it and get it registered. So all you have to have is your boat registered. There's no registration for your trailer or your motor, just your boat.
Awesome. And then the last one here, just talking about the boater education course or boating safety course. Is there any cost associated with that course, or is the actual course itself free to take?
Yeah, so the actual course itself is free. So when I offer it, I'll set it up from about 8 to 12 o'clock is the time. And it's totally free to take. The only thing you have to pay for is that $10 Type 600 boater safety permit, and that just covers the cost of the materials, the mailing it to you and printing the card off and that sort of thing. So I guess you could say it still costs $10, but the actual course is free. To get your card, it costs $10.
Awesome. And they just have to pay that $10 and get that permit before they take the actual test. Correct?
That's correct. So they'll get that permit, and then say you come to my class or you go to the library, they'll have these little silver stickers that they stick on there, and they'll carry that as their temporary to show that they passed the exam. And then in a week or two, once they get that mailed off to TWRA, they'll get a hard card and they'll keep that on them, kind of just like their driver's license, just their boating license.
Seth, have you got any in-person classes on your schedule yet? Now that
Man, no, I
COVID's
don't
kinda
right now. I'm
letting
looking
up?
for one. I just had one. I had 59 participants. The Saturday before Memorial Day, had a big class. Of course, with COVID restrictions, it was hard last year to ever have one. So I think everybody kind of jumped in on it this year. I'm looking at July or August. I know that's getting kind of late into the boating season, but hey, we're in Tennessee. It stays warm till plummet October here. So I'm looking at July or August. My July is packed, but I'm gonna try to get another one in, or maybe even maybe even two more. So maybe you could send that out if I get one. Maybe just attach that link to where they can go to look at it and find a class, because I know they're offered all over the state.
Yeah, if you'll get me that date, I will, I'll make sure these guys get that information. And then, I know normally TWRA will build a Facebook event or something like that. Maybe we can share it like that as well, so.
Well, guys, I think that's all the questions that we have. I don't see any more coming in here, so. Looks like we're wrapping up a few minutes early, so that's good.
That's great, Seth. I appreciate you helping us.
Hey, man,
You've got a
no
wealth
problem.
of knowledge. And if you guys think of any more questions after we get off here, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll do my best answering it. And then obviously I'll reach out to Seth if it's kind of on the enforcement side of it, but we'll get your questions answered. You'll be receiving an email tomorrow that's just it's going to have the links for some of the stuff that we shared here tonight. And then you'll also be receiving a recording of tonight's virtual class, and it'll probably go out sometime next week. But like I said, if you got any more questions, feel free to reach out to me and Jeb, and we'll get them answered. Thanks again for joining us.